That was a good video. Huh? What's this? Free Aquarium CO2? Heck yeah! Just breathe? Wait, huh? It's a well-known fact that us humans inhale oxygen and exhale CO2. So I wondered, can we use the CO2 we exhale for a planted tank? Now before we go into the experiment, we should find out exactly how much CO2 we breathe out. From this article by the Washington State University, we exhale on average 35,000 to 50,000 ppm of CO2 per breath. Whoa, that's a lot, but is it enough for an aquarium? To begin this experiment, we'll use a clean 5-gallon bucket. And in this bucket, we'll be adding distilled water. Why distilled? Because distilled water will have 0 impurities that might interfere with the experiment. This probably isn't necessary, but I don't want to have any unknown variables messing things up. I will also be adding a heater to the water. Now this is one of those heaters that you cannot change how hot it gets, but it heats up the water up to 25 degrees Celsius. Next we need some way to measure the CO2. For this I'll be using a CO2 drop checker. When the color turns from blue to green, then we know we have sufficient CO2. Now we need something to hold the CO2. For that, I cut up a plastic bottle. Now the problem with this is that the bottle will not stay upright all the time. To combat this, I ended up hot gluing some suction cups to the side of the water bottle. Now this was a pain to attach to the side of the bucket as the bottle is very finicky. Plus it would do this when I blow air into it. Once I got it full of air, I added a piece of styrofoam. This will help me indicate if any air actually dissolved into the water. This idea was inspired by one of Aquarium Co-op's videos. One last step is to cover with some plastic wrap to prevent any water evaporation. And now, we wait. I checked on it 2 days later and it's hard to tell, but it does look like some of the air has dissolved into the water. I'll be running this experiment for another 3 days, for a total of 5 days. Those 3 days have gone by and it's still blue. But that doesn't mean that there isn't any CO2 in the water. First off is to take a look at the temperature of the water. 18 degrees? Yeah, 18 degrees. I forgot to film this, but I did remove the heater halfway through the experiment. Here's why. In this experiment, we have 2 bottles of Coca-Cola. One at room temperature and the other a lot colder. Opening them, you'll hear the difference in air pressure. Even more, when I pour them into a glass, you can notice how much more bubbles the colder one has compared to the warmer one. This is because as the temperature of water decreases, the solubility of carbon dioxide in water increases, and vice versa. Our next test is a TDS reading, which turns out to be 3. Since we used distilled water, that means that something did in fact dissolve into the water. But is it CO2? We don't know, so we need further testing. The next test we need to perform is a KH test. You'll know why in a bit. And as expected, it's either 0 or 1, since the color was yellow the moment the first drop was put in. If you don't understand how a KH test works, I'll be making a video on it in the future. Next test is a simple pH test. The expected results should be around 7. However, to my surprise, it's actually 6.6. If there's anything that can lower the pH of the water, it's got to be CO2. So now it's time to put it all together. We have a KH of either 0 or 1, and a pH of 6.6. With this, we can determine the amount of CO2 in the water using this chart. And from this chart, we have about 3.8 to 7.5 ppm of CO2 dissolved in the water. But it's in the blue, so it makes sense that the drop checker didn't pick up on it as it was too low of a reading. And because of that, using your breath as a form of CO2 for an aquarium is not adequate enough. If you found my methodology about this wrong and have some improvements, let me know in the comments. I'd love to do a part 2 of this. Even more, if you have any experimental aquarium ideas, let me know and I'd love to perform them. That's all I have for today. Thanks for watching, and as always, keep on scaping.